Yeah, we gotta talk about this album today. So, everyone knows Metallica for probably two reasons. You probably know them as one of the best thrash metal bands of all time and releasing Master of Puppets. Or you probably know Metallica as kind of a little more commercial metal album. I'm speaking of in terms of the Black Album, so to speak. It's one of the best-selling records ever made. But every band that always has a best and worst. Now, in this case, we got Saint Anger today. I'm not even supposed to have this in my household. This is considered taboo here. But anyway, Saint Anger. What am I supposed to say about this album? Everyone's ripped on it already. I'm like 16 years late to the party. This came out in 2003, so what am I supposed to say? Well, I do have a few things to say about this album, but first, let me get the typical stuff out of the way first. Let me get the history lesson out of the way first as well. So, during this time, Metallica was... Actually, a lot of thrash metal bands, too, were kind of in turmoil. Now, I'm not saying that they died, okay? I hate when people say that metal died in the 90s. That's not true. It's just... Yeah, the bigger bands weren't releasing their best material, but you had the extreme scene especially just picking up speed. And this album is kind of not ruined at the start, but it had a rough start. For one, before this album was recorded, Jason Newsted left the band in 2001, and James Hetfield went into rehab for alcoholism. So, right off the bat, two problems is that, for one, you need a bassist. Well, you don't need one, but Metallica needs one. And James Hetfield is only available for 4 hours a day at the studio. So, you really just can't do a whole lot with this. So, what they opted to do was to kind of go with a garage style, go back to the days of the garage where you're mostly just jamming. Now, I talked about this in my Load review, but I'll just quickly reiterate it. I am not a particular fan of jam bands. A lot of times they have songs that just go nowhere, and that is the perfect theme for this album. There are all these songs, like Some Kind of Monster, the title track, and some other ones are like 8-minute long jams that go nowhere. It's just repetitive, it gets boring, and I don't even have to play it, but you can probably, just by looking at it, you already know it. You already know the snare sound of the drums. Who in their right mind thought it would be a good idea to have a snare sound like a metal garbage can is being hit? This would be the perfect time to say this too. I don't have the same beef with Lars Ulrich that a lot of other people do. I mean, everyone's always like, oh, the whole Napster situation. I actually agree with him on that. That's, if I was losing out on money that I could be earning, that would piss me off too. Hey, if that makes me greedy, then so be it. But I wouldn't even care if I was the smallest guy, the smallest band in the world, or the biggest band in the world. I want my money if I'm going to be earning, you know what I mean? And, I think Lars is a good drummer. A lot, like I said, everyone just hates him, which I don't understand why. He messed up twice. I will admit that he did not handle the Napster situation all that well, but if you're still giving him grief over it when it's, 16 years later, you need to find something to do with your time. You really do. Anyways, besides that, this album is infamous for its snare sound. It's infamous for the songs being just absolutely monotonous and boring at times. However, I do have to kind of give this a little bit of a slide, and here's why. See, at the time of this, James Hetfield was going through a lot. You know, like I said, he was only available for 4 hours a day for the studio, and a lot of the lyrics on here are very angry. Saint Anger, that's the name of the album, but they probably meant something to him a lot at the time. I mean, there's, Saint Anger, and Frantic talking about drug abuse and all this stuff for addiction. So, in a sense of lyricism, you can't really say a whole lot. This is actually a very personal. This is probably a very personal album for James Hetfield, and even the band themselves have really forgotten about this album. Occasionally, you'll hear Saint Anger live, like a very trimmed down version of it. Which I will say this: if these songs were trimmed down to like 5 or 6 minutes each, and keep out the solos. That's another thing that I forgot to mention. People don't like this album because Kirk Hammett doesn't solo. Now, that's the whole concept of this is to be, going back to the garage and being a jam band. And as much as I love Kirk Hammett on guitar, he is not able to write out a solo on the spot. Very, very few guitarists are able to do that. The only one I could think of is Steve Vai. He's the only guy that I would have faith in to just write a solo out of the blue and make it sound amazing. But with Kirk Hammett and really any other guitarist, I'm not taking any away from Kirk. But honestly, I'm okay with not having solos in songs. I listen to a lot of bands where they don't really even include solos in albums at all. But I think the problem is that these songs just go on for too long. They're not really doing much of anything different. In fact, if you ever see the Saint Anger music video when they're at the prison, that song has been trimmed down to 5 or 6 minutes. And it works better, in my opinion. The album version is 7.5 minutes long, which it drones. And you end up, I can't even get through most of these songs, man. You listen to it for half of it and you're just skip. Some Kind of Monster, skip. Dirty Window, skip. Invisible Kid, skip. And that's a shame too, because I actually really do like the riffs on this album. They're really heavy, really fun to listen to, and yeah, even though the drumming isn't necessarily jaw-dropping like it was on back on Ride the Lightning, if that snare didn't have that tone, no one would have any issues with this. Not a single person would, and that's just the truth of it. Lars is a great drummer for metal, so literally if you take that away, this album would probably be, the quality of it would increase, is what I'm trying to say. Let's see here, another thing. Oh yeah, Bob Rock, their producer, actually played bass on this album. I think it was after this that they got Robert Trujillo, and man, that would kind of suck to be Robert at the time. You go into Metallica and, they're all fighting each other and not a part of, not really doing anything together all that well. So, God bless him for staying with him because I think he's a worthy bassist. But let's see here. Alright, the album cover itself. Meh. I'm trying to find other things to talk about because this is a legendary album. Metallica has released tons of legendary albums. Some really good, others not so much. This being the one that's legendary and infamous for being bad. However, I would rather listen to Saint Anger than listen to anything on SoundCloud. I would rather listen to Saint Anger than anything that the pop scene has, crapped out in the last 15 to 20 years. Oh, what's another really bad band? I'm really trying to think of a lot of bad bands because I really don't listen to a lot of bad bands. But this album, it sucks. This is the worst Metallica album. I know there's Lulu, but that wasn't just Metallica. This is still my least favorite album by Metallica. Well, kind of is, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to re-listen to some of the other records that I haven't heard in a very long time and see what I think. But yeah, easily one of the worst albums I've ever heard in my life. But I'll go back to it once in a blue moon. And that can be said a whole lot more than a lot of other bands that are out there where I hear them once and I never have any intention of listening to them ever again. Some of you may go back to this album or go back to some of these songs after seeing this. I highly doubt that, actually. But if you do, I want you to think about a few things first. I want you to think about what was going on in Metallica at the time. What was going on with James, and what was the actual intention behind this? I think that's actually one thing that might help this album, its status be elevated. It is not really a good album. These jams go nowhere. They're monotonous and boring. The metal snare really gets old after a while, especially. But there's good songs on here. I think "Frantic," the very first song on here, is a good song. If I heard that live, I'd be happy with it. No, I wouldn't, because I want to hear everything off those first 4 albums, and that was it. That's all I want to hear live. But anyways, there's decent songs on here, and all of them have pretty good riffs to it. It's just, it's not as good as it could have been. And well, after this, Metallica would lay low for a bit and eventually come out with Death Magnetic, which is also not a very good album. But Saint Anger, it sucks. And I don't even have to say it sucks. Everyone already knows it sucks. But it says something about a band, who releases, they've released 4 albums that have done more for metal than most other bands. But they also release crap like this. I don't know where I was going with that. But anyways, Saint Anger by Metallica. Maybe try to listen to it again. And just understand what happened behind the scenes. And then, you never know. You might find something on here that you might actually like. And like I said, go back to once in a while. But yep, that's going to do it for this review. I'm probably going to have to hide this in my house. So, I didn't really want to buy it, but it's Metallica, and I had to buy it because I am a Metallica fan. Yep,